Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Office Hours. This week, Slavo is back. Thank God. How are we, Slavo?
Sorry, I missed the last two. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I haven't been enjoying Milan, unfortunately. We shall see this week. It's been very quiet the past 2 weeks since you've been gone, Slavo. So,
Yeah, well, let's hope it's different today.
yes. It usually took 10 minutes or so, and then it got busy, but we shall see.
Yeah, I have a crazy day. I have so many meetings, but lots of no shows as well. So, especially yesterday, I heard the same from Daniel.
It's a shame.
Yeah, but anyways. Oh, you have a. Is that an elevator music there? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It gives you access to AI generated music.
Ah, yes, you said that. Yeah, you mentioned that the other day. Bene, bene, bene.
Hi, Will. Will says, good morning. I would like to make certain that the workflow for my book search app is correct. Okay, no problem. I'll put in a chat for you to join us, Will, and we can go through it. And in the meantime, Baba has asked about chat about PWAs. It's a very broad topic, Baba. Is there anything specific you want us to cover? Hey, Timo. Hope you're all good.
I talked to Will yesterday.
He's been in here a few times.
What about PWAs? That's a very big topic.
Will has joined us. Hi, Will.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Can you hear
How's it
me?
going? Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
How can we help? Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Yes.
So how can we help?
Okay. So I'd like you to. I'd like to. Yeah, okay. I was sorry. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Is there music in the background putting you off? Is that what it is?
I should use my buds. Okay. Anyway, I'd like to, if you could just check out my workflow. So I'm still working I'm having some issues on the back end. So I realize that I'm still trying to debug that, but I'm pretty sure that Claude is not quite helping me in the right way with my workflow. So if you don't mind just checking my workflow for what I'm trying to do is in my book app, my book search app. It's two-tiered. It's Superbase is the database. I wanted to look in the database first, and then to look in Exa AI instead of and that's the second tier, the Exa AI, which scrapes the web. So it will retrieve a book cover, the description, and 3 keywords.
Is it possible if you could share your screening and show us the workflows?
Yes, I can.
Super.
WeWeb. Well, hold it. Okay. How do I share my screen? Oh, yeah, it says share screen. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay, and I want to share this. Okay. Okay. Oh, this is a pretty nice setup. Can you see
Yeah,
it
it's not too
now?
bad. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so let's say, so this is the home page.
Mm-hmm.
So user would type in something like for genre, cyberpunk. They hit enter, they go to the search results page. So a book cover would be here. And book description would be here, and underneath would be keywords. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. One question on this quickly. Well, how are you parsing whatever the user types in? Are you getting that data? And then once you have that data, directing them to this page and using that data? Or are you
What do you
saving
mean user types? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
so whenever they type in that query, are
Yes.
you searching your database, saving that
Yes,
database,
that's
and then
that's the first tier, the Superbase database. And if they doesn't find a book that meets their query there, then it goes to Exa AI, where they'll search the internet for a book that will meet their query.
And
makes
then
sense.
it comes to this page?
Yes, it'll come to this page. It will retrieve the cover, the book cover, book description, and 3 keywords.
And just in terms of logic, and I know we touched upon that briefly yesterday, you go to Exa search only if you don't find the result in your Supabase?
Right, correct.
Okay.
and just so if in a real life case, Will, if I was to refresh this page, would I still see the same search results, or is it reliant that you've come from the previous page in some way?
No, you should be able to even type in a new query from this page as well,
Okay.
right here.
But
So
if you don't, the point is if you don't type anything and you refresh the page, what happens?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't think about that. Should something happen?
Yeah, what will happen is that nothing will happen. You will just reload the page and it will be empty. There's an issue with how you do this from a solution architecture standpoint.
Would you be sorry? Could you go to the home page where you type in the search initially, and then if you let's see the workflow you have set up here. So for whenever you perform the search, what does that workflow look like?
Okay, so that's I have it tied to this, and let's get rid of that. Okay, so what's on that?
Okay, so you navigate to the search results page, and do you pass anything to it? Oh, you do. Okay, so it seems like you might be doing it in terms of a good solutions perspective. So the search, and would you mind clicking on what it is you're passing for the value of the search? So in the bottom right, you see you're passing a query called search, and you're passing a value in purple.
Below.
Oh, the edit?
Yes, what is it you're passing here, just to make sure that it's the same? I suspect it is. Yes, okay, cool. Okay, I think it should actually work correctly per se. So if you were to refresh, it should actually save the results. Could you go onto your results page? So whenever you type something in, you press search, you get taken to that results page. Could we go to that results page again?
Okay.
And then if you click onto the page navigator in the top left, so right now we're on the search results
you want
page.
the layout?
Just above, you clicked layout, just above that. You see it says search results at the minute, just above the layout button.
Yes.
Yep. Yes, if you click on that, and then if
Oh,
you click,
you want to go to the we're going to the workflow, I assume, right?
yes, if you click that cog, yep, and then the
Yeah.
page workflow. Yes, let's see what it does here. Okay, it looks, and then what does it do beneath this? Check if query exists. Okay, I think it, without going into it and looking at every single action, I think it's set up correctly. In terms of using the query, if you were to refresh, it would use that query again and get the results. So this looks good.
Okay, so it's it's the back end then.
Well, this looks good so far. So whenever, what did you want to check? So we've gone from the home page. I type something in. We get taken to that search results page. Is there any more actions beyond this?
No, unless they no, there shouldn't be unless they type in a new query. which would just, they would type in, if they type in a new query, they should get a new, this whole thing should start over again.
Okay, while we're here, let's check that. So on this page where you can type in a new query, what's the workflow set up there?
This on the search results?
Yes, so on this search results page, if you close the workflow so we can see the page, if you type something into this input, what's set up here?
No, it's all set up it's on the page. I don't have it on any element. That was the workflow. That was the entire workflow for this page.
So you're not triggering any workflow from here?
No, I didn't think to.
I don't think it would work. Well, let's see. So if you type something into this search input, it should change the results, right?
Yes.
Let's see it.
Nothing happens.
No, because you have nothing attached to it. You're not executing.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I would have to do what I did with the home page?
You wouldn't have to. Yeah, exactly.
And then call it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
You would have one workflow, and that workflow would be called from when you load the page and also from here.
So I would attach it to this?
Yeah.
So what you would want to do, Will, is if you open up the layout tree again, on the left, you've got it collapsed right now. See the arrow? No, outside of this, if you close this, see exactly there. And then if you go to the Actions tab, if you add a workflow here, so there's the workflow section in this panel. If you add a workflow here, it's what Slavo mentioned. You would basically create a global workflow. So right now, if you were to add a workflow to this button you've got selected, the workflow would only be on that button. But if you create a workflow in this panel on the left, you can then call that workflow from anywhere. So it's reusable, basically. So what you probably want to do is that workflow you had on the page where it takes the query and then searches through Supabase, you would just want to repurpose that, but put it into a global workflow here. So then what you can do is, instead of having that logic at a page level, you can have it in your global workflow. When the page loads, all you have to do is call that global workflow. And then what you can do with the button on this page is just have an on submit. You can just then call the global workflow like you would on page load. Does that make sense? So you're basically both of them are just calling that global workflow now. So that way you can just reuse the same logic in multiple places. Right,
and that won't affect, I won't have to get rid of the home page one? I don't have to worry about that, right? It's just, this will take over everything.
For getting the search results, yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So I don't have to, I'm sorry, so I don't have to delete the one that's attached to the other workflow.
No, actually, we can probably actually do it quite easily. So if you click onto the page, so if you go back to the search results in the page at the top selector, where you viewed the page workflow, and if you, to the right of this, if you, just before you clicked onto it, when you hovered over the workflow, you see the 3 dots, if you click that.
Yes,
and you copy. Yes, if you copy it, and if you close the page selector, so we want to go back to the workflows panel on the left where the global workflows were.
Actions.
Yeah.
No,
outside.
Actions. Yeah.
And if you click the arrow beside new, and you paste. Now what we can do is, if you go back to your page workflow, sorry, you're going back and forth, but if you go back to the page workflows for the search results page, and then in here, if you click on trigger, if you delete your current workflow and you create a new workflow, all we need is one action in here. So if you add an action and scroll down to execute workflow, here you can call all of your global workflows.
So I would type in what I pasted before.
On the right, under workflow. So you need to select the action where you were. Go to the left, select the action.
The execute workflow.
Execute workflow.
the execute.
Yeah, the one you just put there. Just select it. Click on it.
Oh, this one?
Yes, and then go to the right and choose the click on workflow and choose the workflow, the global workflow. There.
Oh.
No, not that one.
If you
you chose to create a new one, so
if you I think you read it. You can, yep. And then if you just click onto the execute workflow action in the center, just above that.
Above that.
That one, yep. And if in the drop down on the right hand side it says choose a workflow.
No, below.
The one, just that one, yep. If you choose the top one.
The top one. There
yes.
You go.
So this is the one we just created. So
right.
Now you can call this from anywhere, and it will use that search query and look through Supabase.
Okay, so if I have another page, then I can just do the same thing again.
Correct.
Assuming you have the query named the same. That's the thing, because without looking at the logic you have set up in depth, whenever it extracts that query, it probably expects it to be named a certain thing. So you'll just need to make sure the query is always named the same thing, so it can properly extract it. Okay, we need to do one more thing though. So to have this set up, if you go back onto the page itself, so if you close all of this so we can see the page, if you, on this search input, if you add a workflow to this, you've already got it selected on the right hand side. Yep. And you can, we've got it set to on change right now. If you click on the available triggers, maybe on enter key, you want to do the exact same thing. So if you add an action and then choose execute workflow, and then just choose that same workflow. So it will just trigger the exact same thing as happens on page load. So it performs the search basically.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, that helps a lot. Okay, so thank you, gentlemen.
No worries at all. Yeah, so long story short, if you want to reuse logic, it's great to put them in those global workflows because it saves you having to edit it in multiple places, basically. Because if you wanted to reuse that page load logic, you would have had to copy it, put it onto that single button, and it would work. But if in, I don't know, if in a week's time, you want to change that logic, you've got to change it in every single place.
That's hell. Yes, yes, yes. No, the global was definitely the way to go. No, thank you so much for both of you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No worries at all. Glad we could help. Super. Right,
PWA first approach. Still don't know what it is.
I'll link you the PWA docs, Baba. If you have any specific questions about features in there, please do let me know, and we can go through some specific features. But yeah, PWA first approach. I'm not too sure exactly what you would like us to discuss. We are deploying a question from Riley. We are deploying our WeWeb apps to the cloud. The version of Node you used was updated to 1828. Do you have a reference page or communication on when your underlying code version changes? We don't at the minute. This is something that devs would have to update.
Yeah, well, we don't have a system for that.
No, unfortunately not at the minute.
What node they use and when it is updated, so no.
Riley is in the lobby with us. I'll bring Riley on. I'm not sure if it's the same Riley that just asked that. Hi, Riley. Are you there?
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Yes, it's the same Riley.
Ah, hello.
Hello, same Riley.
Yeah, we're just doing a few concept apps in it. So we're doing a lot of hosting on the cloud of our apps that we want to use ourselves. So we're just kind of trying to figure out some of the management of that. So one of the questions I have is about the Xano plugin. It looks like it has its own logic to how it's connecting to either the dev or the live environments in Xano, depending on if you're in the editor or what the URL is if you're in like the preview mode. But as far as I can tell, it seems like it just uses the live data once you move to cloud. There's no logic that I can determine that we have like a testing environment and a production environment. So I'm not sure if there's a way for us to split that logic in the Xano plugin to state which version we're running.
That should not be the case. You should have the ability to use different branches for your data sources as well. Same as for the API branches, same for data source. So is it not working, or I don't know, maybe there is something going on, but you should have that ability.
I maybe need to do a bit more research on that topic.
So when you go into the Xano plugin, where you can choose the different branches and what environment you want to have in different branch, you can do that for the APIs and you can do that for the data source. So that should be no different to when you self-host, when you export the whole thing as self-hosted.
Yes. Oh, so I guess we just have to set like an environment variable to say if it's production or staging, for it to pick up which.
I will.
You do that inside the Xano plugin.
The Xano plugin. Okay.
I'll put a link to the docs for it in the chat, Riley. Basically, it's as Slavo mentioned, when you're configuring the plugin, you have the opportunity to name which branch you want to use, which data source you want to use, and so it just has to be a case match with whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there you can specify editor, staging, or production.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I'm also wondering about the authentication process. We're doing it through Microsoft. Right now,
Active Directory.
It's the cloud version.
Oh, okay, the new. Yeah, I forgot what they call it. The new thing. Yes.
Yeah. So it works, but what we've been doing up until now is that we'd have different authentications for our different environments. So production would be one authentication system, like a reference, and then dev would be a version. So we kind of split the permissions, and so users don't get access to the dev versus the production. I don't see any way in the WeWeb editor to kind of define different options for that either.
No.
Is there something we can override in the code or suggestions on that front?
You can't really override anything in the code, so I don't know what would be the best way of doing that. I mean, your different environments would send different tokens, right? To WeWeb.
The idea would be, yeah.
And so you have the same users, but when you authenticate a user, you want to make sure that the user can only access your production environment, not your testing environment. Yes.
Yeah. So we'd have users that would be assigned to different user groups, and so there'd be a production user group and a dev user group, and each one of those groups would be related to its own instance of the app, which we have separated.
Yeah, I guess you can do that with some, like on the WeWeb side, you would just have to, do some branching inside WeWeb. When you receive when the front end receives the token, you look for something. Yeah, I don't know how you do that actually in a token.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have a look into that. And then I guess the last thing that I'll ask is just with the authentication, that still is dependent on like the WeWeb. I think all plugins kind of still run on your system connections, right? So we're still reliant on connecting to WeWeb to authenticate that process. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Is that for all plugins, or is there a way to determine which use it and which don't?
I can double check, but for all of the backend plugins, I'm fairly certain because of the authentication service. Yes, they require a WeWeb service even when you export.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the details. I think that's it for me then.
Super. All right.
Great.
Cheers, Riley.
Thank you.
Right, back through the chat. A question from Tamar. Okay, guys, first, I have a workflow that changes a URL, with a specific variable ID. Then my other actions in the workflow use that URL variable. The issue is that sometimes they can't find it. Workflow that changes URL with a specific variable ID. I'm not too sure what you mean, Tamar, by they sometimes can't find it. Is in it throws an error, or you mean it can't find it adds the variable ID to the URL, but for some reason, sometimes it doesn't get added? I'm not too sure what you mean.
No, either. we need more details, or maybe he can come in and show us.
Yes, I'll put the link in the chat for you tomorrow if you want to join. And then a question from Douglas. Hey guys, how can I use a formula with real-time changes being displayed to the user, forcing its update in the input? For example, converting the mode to an unsupported standard. How can I use it with real-time changes being...
I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure either. Real-time changes being displayed to the user, forcing its update to the input. I'm sorry, Douglas, I'm not exactly too sure what you mean by converting the mode to an unsupported standard. Could you give a bit more information? And then, so Tamara, the other question. The other question is that I use a REST API function with Supabase, but after some time, I receive that the JWT is expired and therefore I need to relog in. I mean, so I'm not too sure why you're using the REST API with Supabase, because in theory, you could just use an edge function or one of the Postgres functions. And because you're using the REST API, none of the refresh that would be natively be handled by one of the authentication plugins, it wouldn't exist. So you'd have to handle the refresh on your own. So if you are using a REST API by yourself and passing the auth token manually, you would also have to handle the refresh manually. So that would be why, I assume.
It's a very, I don't know why like that.
Yeah. And if you can hear me, Riley, I will put a link into the chat with docs. There's a link to the hosting and code export docs we have. In the FAQs at the bottom, there is an FAQ that references which plugins have dependencies with WeWeb when you export and self-host. So that should answer your question. Tamar's joined us. Hi, Tamar.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes. How's it going?
Okay, I'm good. I'm good. I asked you about the workflow because sometimes I'm trying to change pages. It's like the same page, just different URL variable. And it looks like it can't find it, like, or it like use like the old one, or it like can't find it. So I think maybe like if the workflow, when I do like the first action, like the other actions, will they wait for the result from like the first action, or like should I put some a delay between the actions? Should I?
Would you be able to share your screen and show us an example?
Yeah.
Super.
It is indeed.
Cool. We've got you.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So like the test resource and this one, like it's the same URL. I just change variable to with all the other all the data that's relevant to the specific ID. And sometimes like I can do a change, so and it won't work and make the same result. Like it work, but sometimes it doesn't work.
And are you updating query parameter, or are you updating the path?
Can you show us what happens when can you start the workflow? Yeah.
Using, like I said before, like the REST API function, which we so I'm doing first the navigation to the new page, and then I'm doing like fetch. So this is like the items in the
So
page.
there is a small problem with this workflow. Once you navigate to another page, the rest of the workflow will not execute.
Okay, but sometimes it's work. It does. Like working. It's not.
It won't execute. Once you navigate to another page, all the actions down there will not execute.
Maybe try putting everything related to fetch collections. Maybe try putting them in a page load workflow and see if that resolves it.
Why don't I can page workflow?
As in, so if you on the top left where you have the drop down that shows you all of your pages.
Yeah.
Yes. If you open that, and then if you click the cog, yep. And then if you go to trigger page workflows, if you add a workflow here, you can then basically execute workflows at a page level and with page related triggers. So whenever you add a page workflow here, one of the triggers you have access to is on page load. And so you could, instead of triggering these fetch collection actions after you navigate, execute those on page load, which I think would resolve this.
Okay.
Correct. So you navigate the page and then you execute the workflows.
Okay. Okay. I think we need to solve everything.
Yeah, just remember, this is something that I don't even know if it is in the documentation because I heard that before.
Yeah.
It's not. When you navigate to a different page, the rest of the actions don't execute. So that's critical to remember.
Okay, I will. I didn't see it like anywhere, so it's good to know. And the other question, as you can see, I use some functions. It's like this function. You can like REST API call it. You say I should use like the inside workflow for like Postgres function.
No, so if for the fetch collection itself, could you go to the collection? So where the collection is set up in, so if you click on the data tab on the left.
So,
on the left, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying it.
And then if you go to one of these collections, just to see what you're using for the data source. Okay, so is there a reason you've used the REST API as a source instead of just using Supabase as the source?
I just did found the call like the Supabase function. I'm like querying my data, and I can do it like directly in the resource.
I get you. So you're using, you want to use a Postgres function as the source.
Yeah, it's called a Supabase, but it's like a function in Supabase, but it's like a Postgres function.
That makes sense. Okay. In which case, yes. So I think what would be best is to use the native Postgres function action in the workflow instead of doing it this collection way.
Okay, so like
Yep,
function.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then saving that result to some kind of variable on the front end. It adds an extra step for each of these because you'll have to save it to a front end variable. But this way, all of anything related to the JWT will be handled because it goes through the native Supabase plugin, and that handles the refresh token and everything.
Okay, and there's like a price, like kind of price for like the functionality of the front end for like doing the. Sorry, I think you lost me. The price for like for doing the calling function for variable.
No, yeah, I mean, if there was, it would be extremely minimal. The action of saving it to a front end variable would take milliseconds.
Okay. Also, thousands of like files as well. Or like it's like the same collection, right? Like the same calling function.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you're breaking up a bit, Samal.
Can't hear you anymore. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Now it's better?
Not very well.
Still choppy. Maybe if you stop sharing your screen, maybe it might use up less bandwidth.
No, not really.
I think it might be a bit better now.
Oh, stop sharing. Okay, now?
Yeah, I think it's better now.
Okay. So you said it's not like a real price for doing the fetching, like the fetching of the data and then like to transfer it into a variable.
No, if you do a Postgres, if you call a Postgres function and then immediately save the result of that Postgres function to a front end variable, it would take, we're talking milliseconds. I mean, I suppose the one thing to be concerned about is that if you're getting thousands upon thousands of records from that Postgres function, you're then using duplicate memory resources because you're getting the Postgres function and then you're potentially saving them to a front end variable. But if you are getting thousands of records, I would then say you should be filtering those records anyway in the first place. So it wouldn't be a problem.
Okay. And do you know like the limit of items I can retrieve before the front end will start to get a bit like laggy?
No, it depends. It depends on how many columns you have, and depends on the size of the data. Depends on how much memory you have on your computer. If you have 128 gigs of RAM, then you can load whatever you want. If you have 8 gigs of RAM, I was running some experiments actually last week in Milan with a customer. She had a Mac laptop with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and with her, in her specific use case, which was a fairly comprehensive Airtable database, her computer crashed at 12,000 records. Basically, that was the cutoff. Okay, so 10,000 it could still manage, 12,000 it would crash. But it's very specific. It depends how much.
Okay, so to try to like hit like half of it, like 5,000, not more, like save on the front end, and then.
Yeah, but it depends how many columns you're loading. It's not just the number of rows. It's two-dimensional.
I'd be more concerned about what you're displaying on the front end. So even if you load in 5,000 records, it might, in theory, your computer might work fine. But if you then even try and show 500 duplicating elements on the front end based on those 500 records, then you're going to have serious performance problems. So
And
it's more a
also-
case of what you're showing.
Exactly,
Okay.
and also it depends how you render those 5,000 elements. If, for example, you have whatever tons of icons or things of that nature, something that is visually quite intensive, then you'll start crashing at 1,000 or 2,000. So it really depends.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thank you for answering all my questions.
And just, I want to leave you with one final thought. There are some rules of thumb, when it comes to pagination. Typically, if you can, don't do more than 20 or 30. That's more, it's much more difficult to consume for a human more than that. So that's what I usually recommend to people. If you can
30 rows.
Yeah, 30 rows, 40 rows. And if you have 20 to 30 rows, no matter how rich the visualization is, then the front end should be able to handle it at any memory, any device. Because you have to keep in mind that your customers might be running some old laptops or old computers that are not very fast, so keep that in mind. As a developer, you have if you have a great device, great laptop, your customers might not be in the same situation. So always make sure you give enough margin for error.
Okay, makes sense. And to just like use like the DOM feature of the data grid when it only shows, let's say, 10 rows, if I can, and then it's okay that they have like more than like 50 like items on the front, but I don't show them like all the data.
Yeah. The data grid is that data grid you're talking about is very performative because it has what's termed virtual loading, where even if you, in theory, in the settings, load in 10,000 records, only the records in view are rendered. So even if you have pagination set up and you've got it to say 50 records per page, if in view you only have 10 records and then more records only come in view when you scroll down, it's only those 10 records that are rendered, which is why it's so good for performance. So if you're using that data grid element, in truth, you don't even really need to worry about the performance aspects.
Exactly.
Okay, so if I'm using a data grid, I can do more than 50, like a lot more.
With the data grid, you can do whatever you want with the new one.
Yeah, you could genuinely have 5,000 records.
Yeah, you can have 10,000. I mean,
Yeah.
as many as you want. The data grid will manage it for you.
Okay. Also, like a million, or like no, like not.
Anything you want, the data grid will manage it.
Okay. I need to do it also with the Kanban, and then I will be perfect.
The Kanban will not manage it for you.
Yeah.
There you
No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
To make it simple, it is only the new data grid that does it.
Okay.
All the other elements do not do any management for you.
I will wait for you to do it also with the Kanban.
Sorry?
So I say I will wait for you.
Okay. No promises.
Yeah, exactly.
The time being.
Maybe one day.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much.
No worries. Cool. Right. Abby also joined us in the lobby, so we'll switch to Abby. Hi, Abby. Can you hear us?
Yes. Hi.
Hiya. How's it going?
Good. Thank you. How are you guys doing?
Very well.
Good. How can we help?
I actually I was just building my site and I ran into an issue and I realized, maybe they're office hours, and I just got super lucky. So thank you. I just had a question. I was looking to, I'm building a form. I have two submit buttons that I'm using, or I'd like to use, and both of them will have like different actions. I was trying to look up online, and HTML has this form action field where you can implement two different behaviors when you have two different form submit options. I was wondering if WeWeb has something similar.
No. I think the best thing you could do is set up some kind of branching of actions in the actual submit workflow. So maybe some kind of true or false split or a multi-option branch split, and then have your manually define the logic there.
Yeah.
So like a follow-up question, right? Like if I So in the form, how do I capture which button was clicked? Because I was looking at it. Usually, I would have just done on click for each button and set up all the logic there. But the other way I can think of it is setting up a variable for it on click and setting the value as true. The problem with that is I'm not sure what the sequence of actions would be. Would the on button on click be set to yes before the form action kicks off?
This is
Can I ask just a related question? From a UX standpoint, it's never a good idea to have two submit buttons. So it must be a very. What is your specific use case? Can
Oh
you
yeah.
tell?
So basically, I have so I'm building a dashboard where users can come in and view requests that are coming in for them. So like a CRM dashboard, but they can choose to either pass on a request or accept a request. So that's why I have two different buttons to implement that functionality.
Okay.
so in theory, if they pass on the request, do you actually need any of the validation, or are you just skipping all of the inputs?
Actually, in both cases, like I'm passing the validations. I'm just like the validation is happening outside. So I just need to capture which button was clicked.
Yeah. I would do that through a variable. That would be the quickest thing that comes to my mind. So when you click on either of the buttons, it will set a value in the variable, and then you use that variable in a workflow.
And on that, I just realized as well, actually, with the new form containers, one of the actions you have available inside of a workflow, so any element inside of a form, inside of its workflow, regardless of the trigger, there is an action called submit form. And so in theory, what you could do is, I know one of your concerns, and it makes sense. You said if I have an on-click trigger on both of these and also an on-submit trigger, which will run first,
Yep.
for both, you could just have an on-click workflow. As Slavo mentioned, change a variable that tracks which one was clicked. And then after you change that variable value, execute the action that submits the form. Because you can now do it inside of a workflow, regardless of what the trigger is.
Yeah. So yeah, totally makes sense. I'll definitely try it out. The only concern was when you click on, like, when you hover over the submit button, it says don't use the, like, when you start creating a on-click workflow, there's this whole the warning saying don't associate a form submit to this button, use the form container. But yeah, I think it makes sense. I can
You need
try
to
it
do
out.
it through variables because that gives you the control. You
Very,
have
very quickly, Abby, I'll just show you what I mean on my screen.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So this is, I've literally just to drag the form onto the page, so it won't make any sense, but just to show you the form container. So as you mentioned on this button, I have this warning, but the reason I have this warning is because its type is set to submit button. So if I just change this to be a regular button, I no longer have that warning. And so what you could do is, because the button is inside of this form container, in the workflows, even though this isn't on submit, it's on click, I have this submit form action.
Okay.
So in theory, you could change a variable value, change the value, the variable that tracks which button it was clicked, and then submit form. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So I also need to, so I have to like update my database at the back end once this happens. So I do submit form, but then I go back to the form container and add my logic there for how the form should be submitted and what action should be taken. Is that correct?
Not exactly. It doesn't. Could you re-explain it in some way?
Okay, sorry. So when you click on, let's say you click on pass, I want to store that value in a variable, and depending on like pass, it goes into a different table, and if you accept it, it goes into a different table, and it's connected to Supabase. So when I click on the pass button, I'll set the variable as pass, and then I will submit the form. Now, for me to implement the logic of the form submission, I'll still have to go to the form container and add the details there, right? Like if pass, then add to this table, else add to the other table. How do I implement that logic?
You would, yes. So you would have, I can show you quickly. If I understand the question correctly.
the validation will be the same whether you pass or you accept, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so then you just, well, Matthew will show you. Then you just need to change the logic in the workflow.
Exactly. So because all you need to do is submit the form.
Yeah.
And so then on your form itself, on the on submit workflow,
Okay.
you would just
perfect.
have something like true,
Yeah.
false, and then have
Perfect.
if button type equals pass, do this. If not, do this. And as you
Yeah.
said, you would just have the correct actions to save whichever tables you need and so on.
Amazing. Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that when you initiate submit form, it actually triggers the actual form container submit, and then I can add additional logic there. Okay, perfect. Super helpful.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
No worries at all. Glad we could help. Hi, Nikunj. Thank you, by the way, Slavo. You just made me realize that there is nothing in the docs about the nuance of navigating to a page and the workflows don't run after it.
Yeah, we need to put
so-
it there.
Yeah.
Someone asked that the other day, because the workflows are stored on the page. So when you move to a different page, that new page does not have the context of the old workflow. So it doesn't look. What are we guys doing? You answer that.
Everything and anything.
Yeah. What would you want us to do?
Yeah. For the right price.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
What? Beatrice has a question. I would like to know if I want to create a basic responsive page template with a side menu and a content section with a header to allow my team to connect and create. That's possible. I'm not sure what the question was, but if you're saying, can it be done?
No, there's a follow-up.
Sorry, yes. What are the best practices or the right combination of sections you recommend? Interesting. So create a basic responsive page template with a side menu, a content section, and a header to allow my team. So you would want the reusable parts to be what are termed multi-page sections. So the side menu and the header, you would want those to be multi-page sections because you're going to probably reuse the side menu and reuse the same header across pages. The nice thing about multi-page sections is that you basically don't have to re-render them from page to page, so they're very performative. And as well, they act, they're reusable in the sense you don't have to edit it in multiple places. So if you want to change something in the styling or the display of the side menu or the header, you wouldn't have to change it in multiple places. So multi-page sections for the side menu and the header. And then for the content, it would just be a standard container. In terms of making it responsive, you can switch between breakpoints in WeWeb. So it would be a case in truth of editing the styling so it fits the full viewport. So that would be a width 100%, probably a height 100%. You would need to test it and then test it amongst those multiple viewports. But in truth, to do it as quickly as possible, I would actually recommend using AI because the AI is fantastic for design. And so if you describe to it what you want and ask it to make it mobile responsive, it will get very close, and then you can iterate on it. That's the quickest way, in my opinion. I'm not sure what you think, Slavo.
No, I agree. I was just going to say, depending on how many pages you want to build with those forms, you might also make the form into some sort of a reusable component with a drop zone. And so you can reuse that component for all your pages, all your forms, and you just change the content of your drop zone for that particular page. And depending on how many of your form elements are being repeated. So it depends, but all of these things contribute to maintainability of the application and performance. So yes, we did watch Andor. I love it. It's great.
I haven't seen it. I feel old now.
Best Star Wars show in years, in my opinion. I highly recommend it.
Maybe we'll do a watch along for the next office hours.
Yep. Okay, 7 minutes left. Can we return to WeWeb now?
There is as well, we do have a page on responsive design in the docs, Beatrice. I'll put it in the chat. The UI is outdated. This was made a year or so ago. But in terms of the core concepts of how you would make a page responsive and how you'd switch between breakpoints, it's still the exact same concepts, but some of the UI will have changed since these docs were created.
But honestly, I could not recommend anything but AI for this.
Yeah.
AI, it's so fast and so accurate. You'll not be able to do it manually as good as with the AI. So highly recommend it there.
Are we programmers, Slavo? What do you reckon?
And so I'm not a programmer now. I'm a builder.
So am I. That's a very good way to term it. I'm a builder.
And maybe I am a programmer. We are programmers, but visual ones, not coded ones. Full disclosure, I can code, but I hate doing it, so I don't do it.
Yeah, Slavo is an engineer at heart. He just doesn't let on.
Yeah, I actually have a degree in coding, but I don't use it. And Matthew, you are an artiste.
I always say it with a French accent.
Yes, of course. WeWeb has to have a French. We're both so French. Matthew, I will have to drop off. I need to QA urgently something for the release. So
no problem. Thank you for joining me, Slavo.
I have to move on because they're waiting for me. So sorry. Thank you. Have good fun. The 5 minutes.
I will do. No worries at all. See you soon. Right, we've got 5 or so minutes left. If there's any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I will put a link also one last time in the YouTube chat. If you have any questions, like I say, pop them in the chat, or you're more than welcome to join me, and we can go through it in person. So CSS. Not exactly. More like a WeWeb artist, Nikunj. WeWeb, you can use custom CSS, so maybe a bit of CSS, but more so in a visual UI. Any hints about new releases? I would yeah, I think you might have seen it tomorrow, but I'll link. I'll put a link in the chat to the community forum post our CEO Raphael made about updates. I think he'll put one in there soon. And the last one I think was 2 weeks ago now or so. So he'll put another one in there soon about what we're working on. Because that in truth is extremely transparent. What Raphael posts on that puts on that post, sorry, is exactly what's coming in the next releases. But there's a lot coming. So much it's even hard for me to keep up with. There's a lot of cool stuff. I'll bring you back in, Abby. Hey, Abby.
Hey, thank you so much.
No worries.
I had a question on sections.
Yeah.
I'm trying to reuse the base template. So the way I look at it is like there's a template for the landing page, there's a template for the CRM dashboard, and I'm trying to reuse components across. Like I want to create like a separate app where I can copy in the landing page, copy in the dashboard, and I haven't had any luck. I posted on the chat. I posted a question like a while ago, and someone pointed me towards sections. But right now, I'm not able to reuse components across apps.
So what is it? So when you say you want to reuse, am I right in saying you want to reuse the pages?
Pages or parts of the pages. I don't mind like sections or even the whole page, but I'm not able to reuse the content across apps.
And do you want to just reuse the designs, or do you actually, let's say if you create like a button element, do you want to carry over just the designs, or you want to carry over the core functionality of that button?
Just the design.
So what you can do then is I will share my screen again quickly.
Yep. Because like the sections page has the saved library, which is no longer, the documentation says saved library, but that's no longer available. Yeah.
What you can do, I'll just create an example. So for context, this doesn't, I asked the question of do you want to carry over the logic or just the designs? Because if you wanted to carry over the logic, what you can do is when you're hovering over an element in WeWeb, in the top right, you have this new button.
Okay.
And when you press this, you can turn it into a component. And I won't go into the ins and outs. We have a few videos and documentation on it.
Yep.
But it turns it into a component and you can configure all the logic in here.
Okay.
And whenever you do this, you can then reuse this component across pages. It carries over the designs and it carries over all of the logic that you set up in here.
Okay.
But if you want just the designs, what you can do is I'll just put a div here and then I'll put some text inside it. And I'll give it some padding and I'll give it a background color like so. And when you click the three dots here in the top right,
yep,
you have this save to assets option.
Okay.
So I can save it to assets. I don't have any folders, but you can set up folders. And so I'll just press create. I'll just name it something random. I'll create it. And so now if I go to add, I go to assets. I now have access to all of my assets. So in here you have both components and what I guess you could call the UI kits. So we'll have what we just saved, but you also have like button components and anything you save as components. And so here, this is what I just saved under the assets as a UI kit. So when I drag this on the page, I have basically a duplicate. But it's good to be aware that it's not a component and it won't transfer over any of the logic. So what I mean by that is on this flexbox, if I give it a workflow, and I don't know, I wanted to change a variable value, for example, we obviously created this UI kit. We saved it as, we need to term this better because right now it just has saved to assets and you don't really know what it's saving to assets. But let's say for the sake of the example, we saved it as UI kit to the assets. If I then reuse this UI kit, like so, it hasn't transferred over any of the workflows. So I just reiterate that because it won't save any of the logic. Whenever you save it to assets from this 3-dot menu, it purely just transfers and saves the designs. Okay. Which is fine if that's what you wanted to do.
Yep. But I tried doing this. It doesn't work across apps. Like that. How do I make that happen?
So if the app is in your workspace.
Sorry.
No worries. If the app is in your workspace, what you can do is when you click on assets here at the top, you can go to library and there's this share button. And so if you click share, you can just type in some kind of commit name and press publish.
Oh.
And so now if you go to another project, so let's say I've switched to another project, I can press this book icon and then there's all these available libraries. And the one I've just shared from a different project would be available here for me to add.
Oh, okay. Awesome. That's super helpful. Thank you so much.
No worries. Cool. Right. That is us for time. As always, we are here every Tuesday, same time. I'll be joined, I think, again by Slavo next week. Flo is still on paternity leave, but I think he might be back next week. So we'll have updates. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. As always, we'll be here again, same time next